and welcome to my October wrap up. These are all of the books that I read during the month of October, but I had a bit of a hit and miss month. So I read 5 books and I put down 4 books. So I'm going to talk about all of them. So let's get into them. Firstly, I want to start with a new release by an author that I'm a huge fan of, and that is Rick Riordan. So Wrath of the Triple Goddess recently came out at the end of September, I believe, and I listened to the audiobook, and this one follows Percy Jackson, obviously, because it's a continuation of the original series, and it follows Percy as he tries to get recommendation letters so he can get into college. And to get these recommendation letters, he has to do a mini quest on behalf of a particular god. So this one was actually perfect to read for the spooky month of Halloween because Percy and his friends are babysitting Hecate, so the goddess of witches and magic. They're babysitting her animals who are, magical creatures, and it just felt kind of spooky. And as always, I love Sally Jackson, Percy's mum. She's the real MVP of this whole series. It also would not be a Percy Jackson book or a Rick Riordan book in general if there was not some random side character who is an eel in this case called Janet. He just likes to throw stuff in there that is very random but at the same time very commonplace for this world. But I gave this one 4 stars and I enjoyed it. I like the depth of the relationships between the main characters. I just liked Percy's journey in general. I like that even though it's a new book, brings in new readers but also is very faithful to old readers as well. So it's good for a mixed audience, which I really enjoy. So I had a great time with it, and that kind of set the bar of I want to read some great things in October. And then that bar wasn't met, which leads me very nicely into talking about The Tainted Cup by Robert Jackson Bennett. Now, I started this in mid-August, so the fact it took me so long is a concern, and I really wanted to love it because I enjoyed City of Stairs so much by the same author. I gave it 5 stars, but this one I could only bring myself to give it a 3. And this one started as like a almost cozy mystery where there is a murder in this house, and this character named Din who almost has a photographic memory. He's been genetically altered, and because he's got this photographic memory, he's been sent off to investigate what has gone on in this house and to interview people and gather evidence, and he's bringing that evidence back to his mentor. And his mentor Anna is, I want to say crazy, but she's like the tasteful crazy kind. She's very eccentric and she's got her own focus and ability as well, and it's almost a Sherlock-esque story with these 2 unlikely characters, but for some reason I just couldn't connect to the dynamic. I enjoyed it, which is why I continued reading it, but I was just not emotionally invested very much, and I think that's just a sticking point I personally have with Robert Jackson Bennett's writing. For some reason, Shara in City of Stairs, I connected straight away and I really liked her dynamic, but I just did not love the dynamic of Din. I liked him, but I just was not over the moon about it. Then this shifted from a cozy murder mystery into something bigger, and I liked that shift because you got to see more of the world. The world is very intimidating and it involves leviathans and walls that protect a city, and it's almost like nature is specifically fighting against the humans who live in it. It's a very fascinating world, and then more killings started to happen. So it went from a small scene to a massive, okay, this is a giant plot, like political conspiracy, what is going on here? So I liked the shift in it, but I was just, again, not connecting to the characters. I felt lukewarm about them. And at the end of this one, similarly to Foundry Side, it's like there was suddenly a queer romance thrown in, but it was a little bit foreshadowed in this case, but I don't know, I just didn't feel the spark from it. So it's like it almost got thrown in as a bit of an afterthought, which is how I felt about Foundry Side as well. So that was a female-female romance, this was a male-male romance. So I was like, I don't dislike it, I just wish that it was a little bit more emotive for me. So that's why I settled on a 3 stars. It wasn't great, it wasn't bad, but kind of middle of the road. And I think whether I finished it or put it down halfway through, like, it wouldn't have made a huge difference to me. So I thought, I should just finish it, I guess. So I did, but maybe it was me wasting my time, and that kind of happened through the rest of October, so I accidentally set a trend. Then I regrettably picked up this book, and that is Powerless. This book felt like a wannabe of the Hunger Games in this world because of, I think, an environmental event or something. Characters now have abilities, so it's kind of like a bad mix of Red Queen and the Hunger Games. It did not go over well. So Peyton, our main character, is pretending to have an ability of like a psychic or a seer just because as she was growing up her father taught her powers of observation. So she's kind of getting by with these fake abilities, and she therefore uses these fake abilities, so her power of observation, her power of combat as well, which she's trained for her whole life, which was nice. She didn't get like a random montage for a week and suddenly she was an insanely gifted fighter. Like, she's been doing this her whole life, so that was at least convincing. But she saved this guy in this city from being mugged and murdered. And this guy turns out to be, I think, not the prince, but related to the royal circle. He's saved, everyone witnesses it. So when the trial comes around, all the people who witnessed it nominate her to go into the trials because she's now got this reputation. So now she has to go through these magical trials and she doesn't even have any magic. I knew I was going to eventually put this book down though, because at the beginning when this character of Peyton was being introduced, she was talking to her best friend Adina, and they both live on the streets together and kind of rustle up a living. Every single sentence, they were calling each other by name. And I'm like, that is not realistic dialogue at all. It was just not believable at all. And it kept removing me from the story. It's one of the many things that just rubbed me the wrong way about this book. There was also a really botched love triangle between the prince, Kai, and then Kit, who she saved at the beginning of the book. And he's this person who arrests ordinaries and exiles and kills them, but at the beginning he lets a few go, so it's like, oh look, he's the bad guy, but he's actually not because he saves lives. And I'm like, that's kind of poor still, like he made them go into exile. It's just a whole mess of a book. And the dialogue was so unrealistic, I kept cringing at all of the interactions between the supposed love interests. It was just a mess. And then when they got to the trials, it was very clearly an attempt at a Hunger Games style story because they're in a forest and they've got to survive. But it was so poorly done that I was like, I can't do this anymore. And I put this down with 3 hours left of the audiobook. I was like, I cannot. I draw a line. This character is ridiculous. The love triangle is not believable at all. I hate love triangles anyway. It's just not good. I was gonna probably give it a 2 or a 1-star rating. So I'm glad I put this down and saved myself. Then because it was a spooky month, I thought I'll try a popular book that everyone seems to be enjoying by T. Kingfisher, which was also a mistake because while this is necessarily not a bad book, it's just not a book that fits my taste. So I picked up What Moves the Dead and I got 10% into the audiobook. And this one follows a main character who's coming back to this mansion and she's coming back to visit her friend Maddie because Maddie is dying, and it's almost an Edgar Allan Poe retelling, but I feel like it's almost adjacent because it takes it in its own direction. There was also discussion of a war and history and survival, and as I was reading it I thought it seems like the narration style and the context of the story is going to build a really great like suspense and horror, but at the same time I knew that it just was not my personal taste, so at best I'd probably give it a 3 stars, so that's why I put it down pretty quickly. I read Frieren, and this one is obviously a manga, but I only gave this like a 3 stars and enjoyed it, but this made me go and pick up the anime, and I am now obsessed with the anime. So this manga volume follows Frieren. She is an immortal elf, and at the beginning of this story it's called Journey's End because it shows her coming back from this 10-year journey and quest with her old crew, and they have successfully slayed the Demon King and brought an era of peace to the land. So they have now come back to the city where the king is to report the good news. They've received their accolades, they watch a meteor shower, and then Frieren is like, I'll see you guys next time this meteor shower occurs, catch you later. And she doesn't really have a concept of time in the same way that humans do. So obviously when she comes back to the city 50 years later, which is when this meteor shower is due to occur again, all her friends are now significantly older, and it is the last meteor shower that they're all going to see except for Frieren. And then after they view this meteor shower, they go their separate ways again, and Frieren returns to the city only when her friend has passed away and is coming back for his funeral. So she really goes, I need to reflect on this. I wish that I knew him better. I should have been more invested every single day when we were on our quest, because 10 years for her is nothing, but 10 years for all the humans in the party is a long time. So that makes her recognize that time is really important, and she wants to reconnect better. So she wants to retread the path towards the Demon King quest that they initially did. So as she's going on that quest, she encounters different characters. She's almost building another crew this time around, but is trying to stay a little bit more in the presence than she did before. And also she's reminiscing on what has happened in the past. So this one was really beautiful in the sense that it gave you the message of change being okay and growth is okay, but it's also beneficial and important to reminisce and remember what was versus what is now. And I really liked that message of this story, and that's why I love the anime so much, because when I was reading this it just felt kind of flat and I didn't get the emotion from it that I did in the anime. Whereas the anime, everything obviously is in color, it's all voice acted, there's music, so it was a lot more evocative of that emotion. So I'm happy that this made me go, I think I could actually love this, I'm gonna try the anime, and that's what I did. So this was a 3 stars, but the anime was a 5 stars, so I'm still counting this as a win. Unfortunately, what is not a win though is Tempest of Tea, and I have had this on several different to be read plan videos over the past couple of months, and I was like, I finally just need to actually get my act together and and pick this up. So I started the ebook, and this one is about Arthi. She is a criminal collector of secrets. She owns and runs this tea house, but at nighttime the tea house becomes a den for vampires, and she's engineered the whole place so that it can be converted very easily into a tea house for the public versus a tea house for vampires. And she's also got not a sidekick, but like a co-owner of the tea house called Jin, and he and her both grew up on the streets when they were very young, and now they own this tea house together, and they're basically criminal masterminds. They've got accolades within the criminal community. And because of that, as I was reading it, I was like, this is not believable to me. It just feels like a bit of a ripoff of Six of Crows, which involves a very ragtag crew that go on a heist. And similarly, Arthi pulls a bunch of criminals together that are not clearly getting along to go on this heist to infiltrate high society because their tea house is threatened. It looks like they're going to be sold at the end of the week by powers outside of their control. And because of these machinations, Arthi wants to get to the bottom of it, and she pulls these characters together to infiltrate this high-class event. Usually she wouldn't be able to get in there, but because of this crew, she's got a few connections and a few conniving ways to do so. So it's almost like a heist, and Arthi seemed to almost know everything. And I'm like, she's 19. Surely she can't know everything. So it felt like a bit of a character ripoff of Kaz Brekker. They felt the same when I was reading it. So it wasn't vastly different in personality either. So it was just a bit disappointing, and I didn't really get too far into it. I got far enough to see the elements of the different crew members together in a room, and then after that I thought, I'm not really invested in any of them, so it's a waste of time for me to read that, so I put it down pretty fast. But then I finally had an achievement, and that is finishing Oathbringer by Brandon Sanderson. I reread this during the month of October, and I'm so proud of myself that I got to the end, because this is almost a 1,300 page book, and I listened to the audiobook, which made it a little bit easier, but it's still very long. So this one is the third book in the Stormlight Archive. The fifth book in this series is coming out at the end of the year, so that's why I'm trying to get my reread in. This one follows our key characters, so Kaladin, Dalinar, Shallan, and Kaladin is a surgeon turned into a soldier. He's had significant loss in his life, and at the beginning of the series he's in a slave cart on the way to the Shattered Plains. The Shattered Plains is where a war is breaking out with the Alethi, who are the soldiers that Dalinar commands, and then also with the Parshendi who live in the Shattered Plains. And the war exists because 6 years ago, Gavilar, who was the king, the Alethi king, was assassinated by a Parshendi assassin. So after that assassination, there has now been a 6-year-long war, but the war effort is kind of lagging, and that means that there is a lot of political unrest because everyone is kind of stuck on these Shattered Plains. So Dalinar really has to navigate that. And we've also got Shallan. She wants to be a scholar. She wants to follow Yasna, who is this very renowned scholar, and become her ward. But she doesn't only want to become her ward to be a scholar. Shallan's family actually needs something that Yasna has. So Shallan's plan is to infiltrate Yasna's close circle, become her ward, and then steal something precious from Yasna. So that is the crux of the first book. Obviously, it has grown significantly since this book, and I've just got to say that I've loved this so far. I gave this 5 stars. I love that this is more of a Dalinar focused book. Obviously the other characters play a significant part as well, but in terms of the development in this book, it is definitely a Dalinar book, and I just love that so much. At the start of the series, I very much loved Kaladin, and I still love Kaladin. Like, he's so close to my heart. But rereading it has given me such a deeper appreciation for all of the other characters. And Dalinar is really up there in a character that I admire and respect. So I gave this 5 stars. I loved my time with it. Now I need to reread the next book, Rhythm of War. So wish me luck. After finishing Oathbringer, I was like, that is a huge book, and I want something really short to compensate for not finishing anything for a little bit of time. So I ended up borrowing Convenience Store Woman from my library, and this is about a 3-hour audiobook, so I knocked it over in basically a day. And this story follows Kiko, and she is just keen to work at her job at a convenience store or a conveni. That's how she wants to live her life, because it's structured, it's routine, she knows exactly what to do. And I wrote down this quote that said, "The normal world has no room for exceptions and always quietly eliminates foreign objects. Anyone who is lacking is disposed of." So Kiko really struggles to assimilate into society with people's expectations on her, and so she really feels that pressure, but she also doesn't really get how to interact in what she would call normally, and she honestly just keeps worrying that she'll be ostracized next out of every conversation she has, because she's not necessarily going anywhere, because she's content working her job. She's been there 18 years and it's the thing that she enjoys doing, but everyone's like, when are you getting married? When are you getting a better job? When are you having kids? And she's like, I'm just good doing my thing over here. Why are you bringing all these expectations onto me? I liked that about the beginning of the book. When I got to about halfway, there was a guy that came into it that I absolutely despised, and it felt like he wasn't treated with the gravity of how you would prefer him to be treated, given that he wasn't a great person at all. But it also informed the end of the book with how Kiko saw herself, and I like her realization, but I also dislike how she got to that point. So I loved the first half, hated the second half, liked the ending. So I gave it 3 stars. I don't know how that marries up to a 3-star rating in my head, but I guess that's what I just had to settle on. I started Bloodguard, and this is a romantasy, so a romance fantasy, emphasis on the romance, and it follows Leith. He is, I think, a gladiator, and he's got to literally fight for his life in the arena. We've also got a princess who is an elf. Her name is Maeve. At the beginning of the story, we've got Leith's perspective, and he's very angry. He's calling the whole crowd sadists. He doesn't want to be there. He's hating that he's got to fight for his life, which, you know, fair enough. Fighting for your life, not an easy thing. But at the same time, I knew that he was just a bit of an ass. And as I was reading his chapter, I was like, I already hate him, actually. And then he locked eyes with Maeve, and they just decided that they had the hots for each other. But someone who was betrothed to Maeve, who she hated, he wasn't a good person. He saw their look, jumped into the arena, and took on Leith, but Leith killed him in self-defense and also righteousness, because he's like, I just looked at her and now I'm in love, basically, or in lust, I guess. And so it started out with Leith being aggressive, domineering, killing another man because he decided to cross his path because he wanted to be with this woman. And I'm like, already know where this is going, and I already hate it. And true to form, in Maeve's perspective, she encountered another woman who was part of the court, and this woman hated her for no reason, really. They hated each other. And I'm like, girl on girl hate, domineering, possessive love interest as a guy. I already don't like this book, and I put it down at 5%. The kicker is I have been waiting for this book for months to come in at my library hold. And when it finally fulfilled, I was like, this is going to be a good time. It's going to have a little bit of spice, a little bit of fantasy. And then as I started it, I was like, actually, I hate it though, which is so disappointing. And then lastly, in October, I finished reading The House Witch Book 2. And this is a lovely, cozy fantasy. It follows Finley Ash Owen. He is what is called a house witch, but he hides his witch abilities, or he tries to, at least in book 1. It doesn't last for very long because he's coming to the castle of the king and queen, and he's being their royal cook. And when he starts cooking, everyone realizes how amazing, how delicious, how world-changing it is. And because he's building this beautiful element of trust and comfort in his kitchen, and then, you know, outside of it throughout the whole castle, it makes his magic stronger because his house witch ability only fosters and grows in that kind of situation. So it very much follows Finley Ash Owen as he believes he's in the right, and he blunders around some interactions, but ultimately his heart's in the right place, and the king and queen see that. Finley ends up going up against some knights because they are morally in disagreement with him, so there's a bit of a scuffle there. And then he also helps out the queen with her upcoming pregnancy, and he just makes all of these connections in his kitchen that is just so lovely to see. And I really enjoyed book 1. I gave it about 4 stars. Reading this one, it delved into a relationship that began at kind of the end of book 1 just a little bit, and now it's focusing on Finley and this woman courting each other, but they're courting in secret because Finley and her have very different stations in the royal court, so to see them together it would technically be a scandal. And there's also a set of soldiers in the city that are a threat, and there's a spy as well. So Finley's trying to help the king get to the bottom of these mysteries that are unraveling in his kingdom, and also at the same time like managing a kitchen and secretly courting the woman of his dreams. So it was cozy and cute, but sometimes I just lost track of a few of the side characters in conversation. I lost track of the intensity of the plot. Sometimes it was great and I was getting like quite emotional. Other times it was just kind of washing over me. So I would settle on a 3 stars. It was enjoyable. I'm happy that I read it. It was readable in terms that it was fast, and I've already started book 3 in the series. So I'm well into finishing this series ASAP, and I actually managed to finish The House Witch in October, which is what I've been aiming for all year. But that is it for my October wrap up. If you've read any of these, or if you want to read any of these, let me know down below in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, but I'll chat to you down below and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.